So today, Jeff is out of town, and so we have Dave Wilson, our good friend. And by the way, I've always joked about this, but you got so many titles.
Did you say good friend?
Yeah, is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as good looking as Jeff, but
Yeah.
if I had a little hair, I'd look a little better. What were you going to say?
No,
Sorry,
I said I
interrupted
always have a hard time picking your title. You were, I guess, currently you're author / radio broadcaster. What would it be?
Radio podcast host. My wife and I host a marriage podcast called Family Life Today.
Family Life Today.
And it's been on radio for 35 years. So we took that over.
Yeah,
listen to this. 1 million people listen to it on radio.
That's amazing.
Do you ever listen to radio?
No.
It's like, who listens to it on radio? Maybe you do, but only half that listen to it on podcasts. So it's evolving more toward a podcast. But yeah, we do a 30-minute show, sort of like what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
About marriage and family. One of these days, we're going to have you and Liz on.
That'd be awesome.
Talk about your amazing marriage.
Well, thank you for coming down to the minor leagues and blessing us and being here today. So, hey, today he's Dave, I'm Chris, and today we are the Bible Guys. So, Dave, today we're going to do something I guess that you've never even heard of.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Whisper Challenge.
No, I've never heard of this.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to put the headphones on your head. I'm going to play loud music. And then I have to think of right now on the spot something to whisper to you. And you have to try to guess. You could try a couple times. Then I'll shut off the music and see.
I got to read your lips.
That's it. Go ahead.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. Ready? It's going to be loud.
Oh, you're kidding me? That is loud.
I tried it out.
How did you pick that music?
It's Uptown Funk. Okay, here we go. Ready? All right, man, I got to think.
I don't know what you said.
Hang on. My sermons are better than your sermons.
Can you say it again?
My sermons are better than your sermons.
No, they aren't.
Huh?
No, they aren't.
What'd you say? You got it?
I got it.
You got to repeat it.
You did it so, you made my sermons are better than your sermons. Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
You're right. They probably are.
Yeah. No,
All right, so
no.
do I get to do it to you?
Yes. No,
All right.
I said that to Jeff one time. So I went ahead and I had a hard time coming up with a phrase. So you got to think of something right now.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Got to come up with a phrase right now.
Yeah, you do. On the spot. On the spot. Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Yep.
You ready?
That is really loud.
That's loud. It's a good song, though.
You got to go slow.
I'm trying to make it hard.
I can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh, I got to say it out loud? I'm better looking than you.
I think you said I'm better at something than you.
Yep.
Say it again.
I'm better looking than you.
Did you say I'm better looking than you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Why is it we both came up with something comparing ourselves to each other?
Because you have competitive as your strengths finder.
That might be.
Hey, by the way, you did not help me there. You moved your mouth fast.
I didn't want you to get it, but you got it. You know what? That's easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You did yours nice and slow and deliberate, but
Yeah.
So the Bible guys, do we actually look at the Bible, or we just play games like this?
We do. Hey, listen, we've only been horsing around for 4 minutes. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I've been watching you guys. You guys horse around for at least 5 minutes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. But then we move into today's passage is Matthew chapter 6. And to remind our listeners, we are just continuing on in the series. We're doing a harmony of the Gospels. So Harmony of the Gospels is all the Gospels together, 4 different authors writing about the life of Jesus. And sometimes, when a story is really important, it's listed in all 4 Gospels. And then sometimes there's individual recordings by an author that stand alone. And today we're doing a standalone. So what we're covering today is only recorded in the book of Matthew. So we're reading from the New Living Translation version, and we're going to be reading about Jesus teaching about prayer, fasting, and giving to the needy, Matthew 6, 1 through 18. So
one of my favorite seminary classes was Harmony of the Gospels. I was in my early 30s and really had never done what you just said, read the Gospels with the other accounts, Mark, Matthew, Mark, John, Luke. And then you see different little details about the same story. Like you said, today is more. And by the way, who's your favorite character on The Chosen? Mine's Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew. Actually, I think you took mine. Matthew is pretty
He
incredible.
sort of wins you over. He's
Yeah, he
quirky
does. Yeah.
and he's following Jesus around, writing all this stuff down. And
Well, the fact that they took the liberty to make him like sort of autistic or whatever, it really does. It is a plausible reality.
Yeah.
Like I mean, we don't really know that Matthew was autistic, but what it did was it sort of explained why he would be so good at what he did with taxes, and then felt outcast, and why he would choose to be an outsider because he was a loner anyway. I'm telling you, man, it's pretty brilliant.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, Chosen's the greatest Bible, sort of fictional story ever, but you get a glimpse that that's what happened. Matthew did follow him around and wrote what we're reading.
That's right.
So it's accurate. You know, he's hearing Jesus say these words. And so I'm reading Matthew 6, 1 through 18.
Yes, sir.
And then Chris is going to give us his expert commentary on it.
Yeah, whatever.
Watch out, Jesus said. Don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. When you give to someone in need, don't do as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. I tell you the truth, they have received all the reward they will ever get. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. When you pray, don't babble on and on as people of other religions do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again. Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need even before you ask him. Pray like this: Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today the food we need, and forgive us our sins as we have forgiven those who sin against us. And don't let us yield to temptation, but rescue us from the evil one. If you forgive those who sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you refuse to forgive others, your Father will not forgive your sins. And when you fast, don't make it obvious, as the hypocrites do, for they try to look miserable and disheveled so people will admire them for their fasting. I tell you the truth, that is the only reward they will ever get. But when you fast, comb your hair and wash your face. Then no one will notice that you are fasting except your Father who knows what you do in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you.
Wow, there's a lot in there, isn't there?
Man, I was thinking the same thing.
I was thinking this should be 3 podcasts, but we're gonna go ahead and cover it all. So here's the part that actually stands out to me, and I read a sort of a note in our Life Application Study Bible. I found it really interesting when it says, "Hey, give in secret," right? Don't give publicly. And it reminds me, by the way, of people who help the homeless, and then they take a selfie of them, helping somebody, and they want to broadcast it. And it's like, what are your motives here, right? And Jesus is saying, don't broadcast how good you are. When you give privately, then you get a reward. Because if you post it, that's your reward.
Is that what he's meaning when he says, don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing?
Well, that's what's so interesting, because my note says this, and this is interesting. This is a take. It says, when Jesus says not to let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, he is teaching that our motives for giving to God and to others must be pure. It is easy to give with mixed motives, to do something for someone that will benefit us in return. But believers should avoid scheming and give to the pleasure of giving, and give for the pleasure of giving as a response of God's love. Why do you give? So I guess it could be, even though it doesn't explain it that way, but it could be left hand and right hand, because I think other times in the scriptures, when he talks about your motive, he says, if your left hand offends you, cut it off, and all these different places where he sort of uses it symbolically about the desires that we have. So I think this is a plausible explanation, talking about, hey, don't try to mix your motives. Don't give with the sense that you want a reward, right? Because that's really what he's talking about. He's talking about two different motives: helping the poor and then wanting a reward from it. So I think that's a really good explanation from it.
Yeah. Have you ever given and sort of blown the trumpet, sort of let people know?
Yeah,
You have?
I think so. I don't think that I meant to, but John Ortberg calls it a shadow mission, right? The shadow mission is let everybody know. And
The dark side of the mission, sort of behind the motive behind.
yeah, and sometimes you don't even realize you have a shadow mission. It's like you're trying to give, but then there's a little part of you subliminally that wants people to know. And then when that creeps out without you even realizing it, then you sort of look back and go, oh, I didn't realize that was there, right? Which is why I think he refers to it as a shadow mission. And I think that there's been times where I've done that, where I've done something and then I tried to disguise it by saying like, hey, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but let me tell you how cool this experience was, because otherwise nobody would know, I got to tell somebody.
When I first came to Detroit, you probably weren't born yet. 1985.
Oh, I was 14, bro.
You were 14 by then?
Yeah.
To work with Detroit Lions as their chaplain. And a lot of people think it was a paid position. It never was. It was a volunteer position. I mean, the team, covered my costs when I flew on the charter flights. And so I took care of me, got a hotel room.
And for our listeners that don't know, you were the Detroit Lions chaplain for over 30 years.
33
years.
And one playoff win.
That's right.
This year, there's going to be some more playoff wins. But anyway, so I raised support as a missionary. I was on staff with Athletes in Action. So my entire salary came from donations. There's a lot of people that work that way. Even today I work for Family Life, but that's most of our staff raise their own support. So listen to this.
Wow.
So I would have a fundraising banquet at the Silverdome. Like in November, and invite 500 people or so and say, hey, this is how this works, will you give? And I remember, I won't say his name, but our head coach at the time really wanted the players to know that he believed in what I did. So he came to the banquet, he wrote a check, and he told the whole team that he gave to Dave and Ian's ministry. You talk about blowing a trumpet. He literally walked in and said, hey, look at this. Here's my check. I'm giving it to their ministry.
Yeah.
It was like the opposite of not knowing what your left hand is doing. He didn't do it in private. He was like, I want everybody to know I believe in this.
Because you're not telling us who, can you at least tell us the amount? Was it like $500, $1,000? What was it?
I think it was $5,000. I mean, we had to raise about 70 or 80 grand.
Yeah.
I think our salary was $28,000.
From the church.
No, from our life. That's our entire, from my raising support back in the 80s, our salary was a couple grand a month.
Wow.
And we also had to reimburse ministry expenses, so we had to raise more than that. But it wasn't much. But he gave a significant check.
Yeah.
And he was one of the winningest coaches in Lions history.
Okay. So
Some of you Lions history nuts are thinking, who is the coach in 80? Actually, it was, I won't tell you what years it was, but it wasn't 85. 85 was my first year. It was 6 years later.
Okay.
So some of you know who it was. Anyway, he's a great guy.
All you got to do is Google it.
He's a great guy. Wayne Fonts. I'll tell you, it was Wayne Fonts. And if Wayne was watching right now, he would still be like, I am proud to be a part of that ministry. I'll tell you, we were playing the Bucks a few years ago. Down in Tampa.
Yeah.
And I'm on the sideline. Again, why am I telling you this story? But I walk up, he's on our sideline, sort of down the end. And I literally, dude, he looked like an old man. It's just funny how I walked up to him, hey, Wayne, how you doing? He goes, who are you? That's hilarious. He's like, oh my gosh. Because it's been so many years since the 80s. But
wow.
Anyway, that story is, I think, with Jesus, and he says it several times in the 18 verses that I read, you hypocrites.
Yeah.
You hypocrites, saying that if you're going to be an authentic follower of Christ, don't live like, I think he's really referring to the Pharisees, the religious leaders at the time, were all about the public.
Right.
Another time he says you're whitewashed tombs. On the outside you look perfect, but I know what's going on in the inside. And these are the things that you do to impress people, but your heart is far from me.
Yeah.
You talk about a challenge for us.
And really, so I think I'm starting to understand why all three of these really are lumped together. It's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
But really what he's saying is he's saying when you give, do it in private. When you pray, do it in private.
Yeah.
And when you fast, do it in private.
Yeah.
That's really what he's doing. So the message behind these three topics aren't necessarily about fasting. I mean, they are, but really the overall message is, do it for an audience of one, do it not to be noticed by others, and that God wants us to seek His approval in these things, not to get rewards on earth.
Hey, what do you think of praying the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah.
Because we read what's often referred to as the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
I always say the Lord's Prayer, real prayer, is John 17, where Jesus prays for unity. A long prayer. But this is the prayer that everybody says is
Our Father. Yeah.
the Our Father. What do you think about praying that over and over? Because people pray it.
Yeah.
Usually before big events in their life. I mean, Detroit Lions prayed it before every football game. It's the last thing we would do in the locker room.
I would say that when the disciples went to Jesus and asked them, hey, teach us to pray, because that's what they said in another gospel, then Jesus modeled this for us. And I don't believe it was a prayer to be recited over and over.
Right.
And the reason why is because in two different gospels, it's recorded two different ways. Right. And so so I think it's a model. I think it's like a basic pattern that we should follow. Jesus was, saying, hey, here's the flow of what a prayer should be. And it should contain these components. Because if we were to follow it to the word or the letter of the law, it's like in one gospel, it's like the disciples said, hey, you didn't say it that way last time. Don't you know the Lord's Prayer, Jesus?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, but basically what he's saying is like, start out by saying, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. And you read the NLT, right? May your name be kept holy. He's really saying, great is your name. And I think that the reason why Jesus started there is because he wants us at the beginning of our prayer to sit back and recognize just who it is we're praying to. Because we come to him all the time with our needs, wants, and wishes. And what he's really saying is like, hey, if you just rest and just recognize just who I am, by the time you get to your needs, wants, and wishes, you'll be a lot less worried about them. And I think that's just one of the components. We could break down the whole prayer that way.
Yeah,
right?
I did this once in a sermon. I know your sermons are better than mine because you said that. But no, this is before you and I were on staff together. I did it for the Lions at a chapel message I gave. I was trying to teach on the Lord's Prayer, this prayer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to illustrate that we often don't even think about the words we're saying. And so I said, hey, let's walk through this prayer. I said, I'm just going to pray it first. And I go, Our Father. And I heard a guy off to the side go, yeah? What? Our Father, I'm here. What do you want? Who art in heaven? Yes, I am. And so we had this dialogue back and forth all the way through the prayer. And the whole room's like, what is happening? Just like you did. They're like, what is happening right now? I'm like, when you pray these words, he's listening. It's a dialogue. So, I mean, he couldn't respond that, yeah, I'm here.
So you set it up and everybody's like, what's happening?
Give us this day our bread. And he goes, you know what that means? No, God, why don't you tell me? Well, I provided manna in the Old Testament daily for the Israelites in the desert.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So when you pray, give us this day our bread, you're reminding yourself, he took care of us before, he'll take care of you today. I'm trusting him So anyway, it was a good way to walk through. Creative.
Yeah, very creative.
That could be coming to a heritage service near you someday.
And by the way, until I spoke at the Lions chaplain that you invited me to, I guess I didn't realize that really those are just guys mostly in their 20s.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
They're
Which
young
means
men.
it's almost like teaching like young adults. And it's because, you see them on TV and you just somehow think that they're like these, just these older, great figures. And you get up and you're like, these kids are just fresh out of college, a lot of them.
They got a lot of money, but they're kids.
Yeah, they're kids. Yeah.
Hey, talk about fasting. Because he talked about giving, he talked about prayer.
Yeah.
Do you fast? Have you ever fasted?
Oh, goodness gracious. I just did. What's today? 2 days ago.
Yeah, and why?
Yeah, well, for different reasons.
So when you fast, do you fast for a reason? I don't know if I'm supposed to be the guy asking all these
95% of the time when I fast, sometimes I'll do it for like one day. And it's because something's on my heart that I'm praying about. And God, talks about fasting and modeling fasting and things. And then sometimes I'll fast for, and you and I have done this. Well, in fact, I fasted with you more than any other person that I've ever done with, right? So for years on staff, we would fast right before Easter, right?
Yeah.
And actually, our first fast that we ever did like that together was in 2008. Did you remember that?
It was 08.
Because we fasted for the campaign. That's what we did for the results of the campaign. And so we fasted for a week. And then the next year it was like, hey, let's do that again. And let's fast for 10 days.
Yeah.
And then for 14 days, right? And Kevin Valentine, our friend, joined us. And yeah, I think there's different reasons why you fast. But the purpose of fasting isn't to let everybody know that you're holy on the outside.
Right.
So you don't just say, hey, everybody, no meal for me today. I'm fasting. Announcement, right? You should just try to keep it on the down low, because God calls us to fast at times just to say, God, you're more important than anything that I desire. And no matter how hungry I am right now, I just want you to know, God, that you're more important than that even. And so the thing I'm praying for and the thing that I'm lifting to you, it is the most important thing to me, even over the needs of my own body.
Yeah, and there's something, we know this because we fasted, but if you've never done it, I encourage you to try it, because when you cut food out, and the longest I've ever done is, I think, 20, 21 days, 3 weeks, but usually I do a 10 or a 14-day fast. Going up to Easter, I still do it. And it's just interesting what happens, because food's gone, which first of all, you realize, wow, it's a big part of our lives, even sitting down with people. But it sort of dials you in, focuses you on, wow, the only thing that really matters above everything else is vertical, this relationship with Christ. So it does sort of focus you in that way. I know that 37 years ago, I heard James Dobson, you know that name, on Focus on the Family,
Of course.
talk about taking a day a week to pray for his kids. The reason I know it was 37 years ago, because my oldest had just been born, CJ.
Wow.
And I turned to Ann, I said, you know what, I'm going to take Fridays and I'm going to pray for CJ and his wife someday, and him being a man of God someday. I had no idea at that moment that I would still be doing it 37 years later. I thought I'd do it for a month or two.
Wow.
But for the last 37 years, now CJ, Austin, then Cody, and now they're married. It was just a day to say, and I remember praying when they were little boys for their wife, who's a little girl somewhere, son.
Yeah.
And their legacy. And I tell you what, dude, I did all 3 of their weddings in the chapel as their dad, but as their pastor. And when I looked over at, Kendall and then Jenna and Robin, I remember looking at him and saying, I've been praying for you before you're born.
Right.
And this day is sort of like a holy day.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's sort of what Jesus was talking about. Nobody ever knew this. And I shouldn't even be telling you now. It's almost like, hey, look at what I did. But it was just this silent little commitment that, again, I'm not saying they've turned out to be these amazing men because I fasted on Fridays. That's not, it isn't a,
Right.
you do this, you get this. But there is something
right.
about saying, man, there are things that are holy in your life. You want to just zero in and say, God, I am just going to lay this before you. I'm sure that's what happened to you this last week. It's like something that's really tender in your life. You're like, this is so important. I'm not begging God to do something because I'm not eating, but I am going to just say, I want to pray continually. Because all day on Friday, when I get hunger pangs, starting about 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon, I just pray. It's just like a reminder, like, okay, time to pray.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And when my oldest daughter's married, my 2 younger kids in their 20s, they're not married yet. But when Brandon asked for my hand in marriage, he took me out to...
He didn't ask you your hand.
Or asked me permission for her hand. Thank you. He took me out to this restaurant. It was a nice restaurant. And I had the privilege of telling him the exact same story.
Really?
I said, I brought Sarah home. I said, we put her in the crib first time at home. And I said, Liz and I knelt down. I said, and it was actually Dobson. It was
Really?
Dobson who reminded us. I think that's where Liz got it. It was Liz who told me about this story. And so we prayed for her future husband. And so I'm like in tears telling Brandon, I said, dude, I've been praying for you for your entire life.
Wow.
So it's the same thing, right? So we both have that in common. That's just an unbelievable story.
Here's what's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is amazing. But I was thinking we both were impacted by a podcast or a radio broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
And now somebody hopefully is going to hear this and they're going to go, you know what? I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm going to join. I mean, it's
couple.
amazing to think even what Ann and I do on Family Life Today, we get messages every day from people all around the country to go, something you said today has changed my life. And it's like, wow, look how God has now turned that whole thing to the next generation.
That is amazing. Well, listen, that's our time, and that's a great place to end. Hopefully that's an encouragement to you, and we will see you next time on The Bible Guys.